Hello everyone and welcome to week 11 of Advanced Exercise Physiology. My name is Professor Mark Baines and this is the final week of our Concordia class for the summer of 2018. A few key points we go into this final week, starting with, as always, our key concepts from weeks past. Important concepts we've talked about before, challenging concepts. There we go, the right slide. First of all, with kids, epiphyseal plate or growth plate slippage, breaking of that plate, the humerus, femur, the long bones is the primary concern often talked about with young athletes. It is a concern, it's a very real concern, but the amount of impact that can be needed to be able to break that plate is significantly high. It would take a tremendous amount of stress on a regular basis to do it, or some freak accident of falling on a limb, or something tremendous to break it. It's going to take a lot for that to happen. It doesn't make it so that we can actually load kids however we want, but it's absolutely okay to give kids external load. Keep in mind, I reminded a lot of you in your post this last week that a lot of times people mistakenly say bodyweight exercise should be first before loading exercises. It's actually lighter to do a leg press with a lot of machines loading wise than it is to do a bodyweight squat because you're lifting your body weight. I weigh 215. I can actually make a lot of leg presses far less than 215 pounds. So it's actually less load to a machine load than body weight. Also, chest press with dumbbells. I could grab two 20-pound dumbbells. Now, while I do a basic push-up, I'm not doing a handstand push-up, would be 215 pounds plus balance. That would be outrageous to be lifting with 105, 110-pound dumbbells overhead press, which is the equivalency, essentially, of doing a handstand push-up with proper form without help for balance, right? That said, clearly a push-up lifting, some proportion of my weight, even half my weight, is over 100 pounds easily, and I'm probably lifting more than that. I could easily grab two 20 or 30-pound dumbbells. It'd be far easier than doing push-ups. So be very careful saying bodyweight exercises are a better way to start. That's actually not true. A lot of exercises, less load, less stress, having external load for the limbs as opposed to trying to load body weight. Be careful with that. But that said, kids can lift weights if they can control it. The concern is not loading them up so much so that you really cause damage to them long term. Because let's be honest, adults, we do things we probably shouldn't do, and we add those same kinds of stresses onto kids. If you're training properly, you have no concerns when loading up a kid, sub 14-year-old, if they can handle the movement. If they have the skill capability, and they have the endurance capacity and the strength, and they can lift it, then we're good. We have to be clear about what the goal is, and there is absolutely a concern, despite the fact the most recent chapter of Powers and Howley mentioning that there are not a lot of noted concerns for endurance-related activities for children. That's not true. Any activity going several minutes or longer at higher intensities, higher than that 70% VO2 max at 80 plus, 85% plus max heart rate is awfully risky for a lot of kids. We have to make sure we're really gradually building up the intensities and making sure they can recover before we start ever engaging such a stress, which honestly would be true of an adult as well. So when we say it can be trained like adults, that's not untrue, but we're absolutely a lot more concerned about what might happen when we're training a kid than we're training an adult because of the impact longer term. So we need to be very careful. With the older adults, basically 65 years and up. Masters athletes are referred to as 55 and up. Older adults we often refer to OA as 65 years of age or older. Sarcopenia, whereby a loss of muscle fiber, about 50% of it's expected to be based upon age, about 50% of it's expected to be based on detraining and not utilizing strength exercises and cardiovascular exercises. They can actually gain back what they've lost faster, true of all athletes by the way. If you haven't been working out several months, you can actually gain back your muscle mass much easier than it is to gain back the muscle mass loss of the last 6 months than is to gain back what you've lost cardiovascularly the last 6 months. It takes longer. It actually takes longer to get cardiovascular benefits back from a standpoint of either hypertrophy versus cardiovascular ability. I'm not talking about training from nowhere to getting improvement. We're talking about training getting back what you once lost. Okay. Other than that, for older adults, for strength training for any adult, at least once a week for significant strength training, at least twice a week for significant cardiovascular interval type training of a moderate variety to maintain where your current abilities are, and you build out from there if they can handle such stressors. Fear of falling is a big one for older adults, and as we mentioned in many of your posts, and I asked the question of many of you, and no one quite got it right. You kind of were on the right path, and no one quite got it right. Very important point. It's not your fault. It's very unclear in a lot of situations. But you need to have higher load, lower speed, which means maximal strength. What's maximal strength? Well, what can you handle for anywhere between a few seconds, 30 or 40 seconds when loading? Whether it's a push-up, we're talking about doing overhead press, we're talking about doing a squat, deadlift, we're talking about running, jumping, not running and jumping, but anything where you're loaded like a slow motion, and you can actually not handle more than about 30, 40 seconds of it. If you can handle more than that, you're gearing more towards glycolysis and you're also getting less benefit towards connective tissue strengthening and bone density. It needs to be high enough intensity without overdoing it, and the person has to be able to control it at slow speeds to maximize bone density and to maximize connective tissue strengthening. That's the best way to maximize it, not the only way to work it. Pulling exercises have no specific benefit. Distraction forces do not, or shearing forces do not, or even torque forces are not what builds bone density. It's compressive forces, okay? And connective tissue strength. Women's concerns, the issues, the Q angle, can be met by really strengthening the hip extensors and the quadriceps. Hamstrings by default, because they're assisting hip extension and deeper motions of hip flexion for going into hip extension and some stiff-legged deadlifts or single-leg deadlifts or maximal squats, or squats I should say, and other deadlifts. Hamstrings assist, they're not the primary mover. Glutes are far more significant, gluteus maximus in particular, as well as the quadriceps for knee extension, proper knee tracking relative to the hip. Hugely important. Yeah, we want to watch it when they're jumping and they're running and that kind of thing, but we need to have specific strength training programs, particularly for women who have that significant Q angle from the hip inward toward the knee. That's a huge need for actual specific strength training, not just the typical training we do out there on the field or on the court or wherever we train for our sport. And of course, osteoporosis being a big concern, as we just mentioned. The higher loads, whatever higher load is. Well, I can't load my people up too much. It's whatever they can handle, 30, 40 seconds. Whatever's low, heavy for them. Stop worrying about what's high load and what's not. It's very dependent to the person, not specifically the same for everyone. It's just not. So whatever you can handle 30, 40 seconds, that's a high load for you, right? And that can build tremendous benefits toward bone density, osteoporosis issues, in addition to the nutritional issues we talked about in a previous week's video, which is what you want to look at for more details on that. And other than that, issues with eating disorders were also covered a little bit in that particular video that you want to be conscious of in the way our females are eating or choosing not to eat. Unfortunately, in North America in particular, a lot of women don't eat when they feel like they're getting too big, they're not happy with their body image. It's very concerning. Some men do it too, but it's a lot less prominent, or boys, I should say, should do it as well, but it's a lot less prominent. It's more prominent with the men for wrestling and fighting, trying to make some weight, some drastic short period of time, none of which is healthy for you. Our constant reminder, sport is not necessarily healthy. However, we need to be as healthy as possible before pursuing sport. Very important differentiation, right? We want to make sure we're consciously aware that women have a lot more challenges or concerns, especially younger women in particular, or any women engaging in more higher intensity activities if they have that significant hip Q angle, potential issues or past issues of osteoporosis, potential eating disorders. Those are all big issues. Otherwise, yeah, a lot of people say, what exercise can I do with women versus men? The same exercises. It's not specifically different. Women do have, by generally speaking, a higher, larger or wider hip girdle, or pelvic girdle, and men tend to have a higher, wider rib cage. That's why a lot of men do perform at higher levels of upper body strength training, where women often perform well at lower body strength training. It's often the case too. Asthma. I misspelled asthma. My apologies. With asthma, we're talking specifically toward people who have breathing issues and often take inhalers with buterol and whatnot. They still need cardiovascular exercise. You can't over-challenge them, so you have to really have that ARP-E recognition and heart rate recognition, so you have multiple parameters to be looking at. Their feeling about it, how they feel, which is their RPs, what they're going to tell you, if something's too hard or whatnot, and you're going to be paying attention to heart rate, see how they're responding, so they can tell you when they're feeling like it's too much, what's the heart rate at that point? If that's what they feel is too much and their heart rate's at that point, we don't go to that heart rate. It's that simple. Okay, they still need to get some cardiovascular exercise. They can walk. They walk to get there, so they can still keep walking. They can lightly cycle. They can maybe lightly swim in some cases. But we need to be lightly, we say challenging your current levels, not challenging to the point of being out of breath. That's unnecessary for someone who has asthma. We want to get slowly building up, and that's how we help combat that problem. Otherwise, make sure you review past videos for other challenging concepts going into this last exam, which is 1,000 points, not 400 points like your previous exams. 100 questions like every other exam. However, this one is 1,000 points. Okay? And altitude training, going on to the chapter 24, 25, our last 2 weeks. You have to live at altitude of at least 6,000, 6,500 feet for at least 21 days, the lowest research I've ever seen, maybe 28 days or more, to get the benefits of red blood cell count improvement, to actually get endurance-related benefits. You're not going to, anybody who's performing any sport that's less time than 2 minutes is going to have such minimal effort benefit from altitude training. I'm not so sure it's worth it. The fighters, it's questionable. 5-minute long round, yeah, you could probably argue that one's a lot more going a lot more toward aerobic beyond glycolytic if they're actually moving at a high level the entire time. But I think it's sketchy for actually thinking that a lot of high performance athletes for fighters need spending a lot of time doing altitude training. It's often used, but it's a lot more towards endurance type sports, not so much just glycolytic type things. You'll get some benefit, but more the endurance, much more the endurance. And of course, you need to live high and train low. Train well below that like 2,000 meters, I'm not sorry, well below 2,000 feet, going closer to like 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet, or even sea level if possible, perfect world. There aren't many areas where you can do that. Southern California has a few. Go to Big Bear in Southern California, then come back down and train low and come back up, live high. Live high 22 hours a day and train 2 hours a day outside of there is about what they found is to be the best benefit. And here's the thing, you lose the benefit of altitude training only a few days of getting out of altitude. You don't keep it, doesn't stick around. If you tried to train altitude and a month later perform well after you came back down to sea level, you're not going to get the benefit from that much at all. Extreme heat versus extreme cold. Obviously, we're going to want to temper our shortening our warm-up for extreme heat and actually increasing our warm-up for extreme cold. We want them to layer with extreme cold, extreme heat. Obviously, we're trying to stay hydrated in both heat and cold. Heat stroke, actually heat exhaustion starts first, sweating profusely and not performing well. That's time to stop and get plenty of more water, get in a cool place, end activity. Heat stroke, they're not sweating, they're probably not even coherent, and that's called 911. Either way, none of those things we can always control depending on your area where you live. More hydration, more than maybe 6 to 8 ounces every 10 to 15 minutes or 15 to 20 minutes. Maybe it's more than that, as much as double that. And eating, particularly more importantly, what you eat before and after in those environments as well. The same things we mentioned in last week's video. Okay? Air pollution issues. When the air quality gets lesser, try to limit times. Preferably early in the morning is the best time when there's a lot of air pollution. Earliest in the morning is the best. Not late in the evening and not later in the day if you can avoid such things. We can't always avoid that. That is the ideal. Long-term problems hormonally, long-term problems endurance-wise if performing a lot of longer duration work in air-polluted areas. Supplementation versus dieting versus what you eat in your diet. Sometimes you need a proper diet. Forget talking supplements. You got to eat well first, or you're just going to you're wasting a lot of money because your body's not going to support the benefit of a supplement, which is not a food. It's a supplement, right? Very important to understand. Most popular supplements for dietitians to be giving to their clients and athletes is actually multivitamin mineral, which is often downplayed for a lot of people. I don't understand that, as well as fatty acids, particularly omega-3s, fish oil. Okay, creatine monohydrate, glycolytic type performance. Even the textbook refers to more creatine monohydrate type, more creatine phosphate type performance. Creatine monohydrate is not going to help you a whole lot for activities 15, 20 seconds long. Try 30 seconds, 60 seconds, more likely. More towards glycolysis. You're going to see a lot more towards hypertrophy. You're going to see a lot more towards interval type training benefit. Not sprinting, power activities. You're not going to get a lot from that. Not going to hurt you. You might see some change, but not significant. It's going to be more towards hypertrophy and interval type training, the best, most significant benefit. Aerobic performance and blood doping, kind of like altitude training. They're kind of trying to simulate altitude by not living in altitude. You're trying to take their own blood out, put it back in with higher red blood cell levels, and cycle it back in. Taking your own blood out and putting it back in. It's not a whole lot of legality things. It's a definite legality issue, let alone from a standpoint of performance anyway. It's going to improve aerobic performance, no question about it. Perform for longer periods, higher intensities. Amazing stuff can happen. That's why Tour de France is so rampant, it would seem, with blood doping and any endurance sports. You got to watch out for that. But that's how they're getting around it. EPO, that's what it does. It's actually increasing red blood cell count so you can perform for longer at higher intensities. Blood buffers are helping with glycolysis. Caffeine's helping with glycolysis. Again, activities 30 seconds to 60, 90 seconds. Your best benefit by having caffeine in your system or blood buffers. Basically, anything that's going to help reduce the lactate production, not lactic acid, lactate. Remember that. Okay, but it's more towards glycolysis, and again, proper diet before you even consider such things. Steroids, what they essentially do is reduce inflammation. By reducing inflammation, they can work for longer at higher intensities. That's why people can take shorter breaks and look for higher volumes. That's why you see people a lot bigger who take steroids, because they can have more volume of training to build more hypertrophy. Medically, it's going to help you reduce inflammation. Sports-wise, and give you a performance enhancement that's not typically legal, right? And that's the benefit you're getting. And there's very high risks of a lot of health issues with steroids, more than we're going to get into at this time. Lastly, you're almost there. It's the last week. If you have questions, you have concerns, today, tomorrow, the days beyond, you have my email. Always email. I want this to be beneficial to you as a coach in the years to come, not just days and not just for this course. God bless. Best of everything to you. Let me know how I can help you out in the future, let alone now.